All right. Well, this is Melissa from Local First Arizona, and we're going to go ahead and get started. There's more people joining as I'm talking, but we'll go ahead. We're running just a couple minutes late. But first off, I want to welcome Angela. We're super excited to have you here today and in this presentation. So thank you so much for giving your time to do this. We really appreciate it. And then just a couple like housekeeping deal. You are muted whenever you join the meeting. So if you could just go ahead and keep yourself on mute. We do record these sessions, so it just makes it easier for people to watch it later if there's not a lot of interruptions. If you do have questions or any issues throughout where you're having tech problems, you can go ahead and drop that into the chat box. And if you can't see that yet, just go to the bottom of your screen, click on chat, and that should open up for you. And I'll just be keeping an eye on that throughout the session. So Angela will be having a Q&A session towards the end of her presentation. So, but always feel free to drop in any questions throughout, and we'll make sure to get those towards the end. So I think that's just about it. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Angela.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Melissa. Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who dropped their information below. I am super excited to see faces that I recognize. It's always great to come onto a webinar and actually see that. So whether you're attending the webinar live or whether you're watching it in replay, I want you to know that you have the ability to overcome uncertainty and cultivate the results that you desire. So this session is Align, Redefine, and Grow Through Change. And so some of us might be in a great place right now, where others might be extremely frustrated, overwhelmed, or quite possibly about to give up. And wherever you are, I want you to know that in this webinar, there are valuable and practical takeaways that you can implement right away. And ideally, when you leave this session, you will be ready to align, redefine, and grow through uncertainty. So as Melissa shared, I'm Angela Garman. I'm a business strategist who assist business leaders with effective change management. So my primary focus is to strategize with leaders as they conquer change and cultivate results. So this is a working session. So please make sure that you jot down all of your notes. And then if you have any questions, you can save them for the very end and we'll open it up for Q&A. But most importantly, when this session is over, I want you to be ready to take action. So we want you today to move from chaos to clarity. So I hope that I provide you with clear tools and objectives as you begin to align, redefine, and grow through change. So I want to start off with this question. What is impacting you from achieving your goals? Feel free to drop it in the chat line if you don't mind sharing, but just want to know what is impacting you? What is currently impacting you? And I'm just gonna wait a couple of minutes because I see some people typing.
Angela, do you mind if I just answer it out?
Kelly, jump right in. Love it.
People, I think, are home more, and so they have more time for projects. And I help entrepreneurs with their projects that they keep putting on the back burner. So now they're bringing them to the front burner and need help. So impacting in a positive way, achieving my goals of growth in my business.
Nice. So you have positive impact. That is awesome. And that's what I was saying earlier. Some people are experiencing some amazing impact and some people are not. So when I look at the chat box, I see that there is uncertainty of the current work environment, and you are not alone, Abby. Sharon says that my ability to focus on something deeply while there are so many things to think about. And so many people do get stuck there because when we go through seasons of change, it becomes so tumultuous. And it's almost like we're in this spiral or this whirlwind where we're trying to figure out everything at one time. And so it's so hard to focus. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Heidi, thank you. Pivoting and changing your business plans during COVID. That has been everyone's challenge. Let's see. Sharon also said, I'm also having a positive impact of clients that I work with who are trying to move to virtually quickly. And I have experienced it, I have the experience and skills to help them and to trust them to get the work done. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much for that. So everyone has identified what is impacting you from achieving your goals. So now I want to shift the question just a little bit. For those of you who might be having experience or who might be experiencing some of the impact from a negative perspective, I want you to think about what, or even the people that are experiencing the positive impact, what is the impact of you achieving that goal? So what are you able to gain once you're able to overcome some of the barriers that you're experiencing? And what's going to be that whether it's a financial impact, whether you're leaving a legacy, whether you're building your business, what is that impact that you're going to experience once you overcome those barriers? Feel free to drop them in the chat. If anybody wants to just jump in like Kelly did, feel free to share. Would love to hear your voice. So looking at chat, we have Heidi said the positive financial pivot impact, love it, or positive financial impact and the ability to pivot during trying times, love it. So as we move forward, I want you to think about a couple of things. I want you to think about one, are you being clear about the direction that you're headed in? Are you being intentional? And when I talk about intentionality, I'm talking about, are you being intentional with your goals? Are you being intentional with your purpose, with your mission, and with your direction? So every day, I want you to think about how are you intentionally lining your goals up and your direction up with where you're headed. And then are you prioritizing what is important and what should be done now? I know one of you had mentioned that, there's so much going on. And with so much going on, how do I stay focused? How do I get clear? And so I want to talk to you a little bit about stats as we dive into this. I want to use my experience to be that launching pad for our discussion today. And so I want to talk to you about 1 in 8. So 1 in 8 of us will go from this to this in just a matter of days. But I don't want you to get stuck there because so many times, especially when we're going through tumultuous seasons, it's almost as though we are in it and we are in it alone. But I want you to think about the 100%. And when you think about, especially when you think about COVID right now, everybody is impacted. But sometimes it can feel like we are the only ones that are going through this season that we're going through. We don't quite understand what it is. And so we kind of begin to isolate ourselves and we begin to think about just the challenges that we're going through. So whether you're like Kelly, who is experiencing this positive impact for change, she's already taken her business model and this opportunity has given her the opportunity to scale and grow. So if you're like Kelly, then what I'm going to ask you is that you reach back to maybe a counterpart, whether it's in your industry or someone close to you, and just make sure that that person has someone that they can lean on during these turbulent times. And if you're on the opposite end where you're trying to figure out how the heck do I pivot during these times, then I just want you to realize that you're not alone. Everyone has experienced change. All of us walk through change so differently. And I don't want you to be afraid to reach out to someone and to ask them for help. And be as specific as possible when you reach out to other people. And the reason why I wanted to talk a little bit about stats, because there are so many numbers being thrown around right now, and it can be extremely overwhelming. most of the time when we look up numbers or when we hear something, I got a text the other day from my sister, and she didn't mean anything by it, but she just said, "Hey, did you know that 55% of the businesses won't even make it through COVID?" Yes, I know that, but I choose to look at the 45% that will make it. In fact, I choose to believe that my business will be one of those 45% that will make it. So mindset matters. We have to, during seasons of change, especially like tumultuous ones, we have to be extremely focused. We have to be intentional, and we have to remember that over these seasons, we have to be extremely agile, and we have to have the ability to pivot quickly. I know some people don't like that word pivot. I've heard that over the last few days. Shift, swivel, whatever word you want to use, you have to be able to do that in order to get yourself and to get your business to the next level. So I started my business in 2016. And in 2018, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, which is an aggressive form of breast cancer. So over 2018, I had a few different surgeries. I think I went through like 3 or 4 different surgeries. I had to undergo chemotherapy 4 different times, radiation, then back to chemo again. But over that time, I was still able to double my business. And I want to share with you the technique that I use and the technique that I use with many of my clients. So I was able to double my business. I was able to sustain my clientele and reposition my brand while still going through those treatments. And so I just want you to know that, even though seasons might be extremely tumultuous for us, COVID has shifted everyone's world. It has caused all of us to really think about how we work, how we live, and how we do business. And so I look at this as an opportunity to truly begin to define or redefine how we show up in the world. And so this is your opportunity to do that. Think about innovative ways to where you might be able to show up and really meet your clientele in a different way. So I want to share with you the ARG approach. And really, the ARG approach is my 3-part system to change management. And it gives you the 3 different parts is align with purpose, redefine your barriers, and grow your influence. So it is always driven by the mission and the vision of an organization. And so today, what I want us to agree upon is that today's objectives, first of all, let's agree to be intentional about the decisions that we make. And we want to intentionally say, hey, I am going to conquer change and cultivate the results that I want. So I'll share a little bit about the ARG approach, which again is my methodology to effective change management. And then I will give you ways to remain future focused and on track, and as you gain clarity in the midst of the chaos. And then finally, you'll walk away with this tool and ideally a plan towards achieving sustainable results and return back stronger than ever before COVID hit. All right? So, what I want you to think about is change forces everyone to be uncomfortable. I mean, by a show of hands, who likes to be uncomfortable? Nobody, right? Oh, Kelly said me. But, most people hate being uncomfortable. In fact, we will try to move mountains to make sure that we're able to maintain status quo. So, the first thing I want you to remember, especially when you're going through crazy seasons of change, is that you want to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because the more you resist change, the longer you will stay stuck. So ways that you can do that is to identify what is within your control. And then you want to begin to shift your attention away from what you can't control and onto things that you can control. So cultivating the results that you want. So a little bit about the ARG approach. So again, it's my proven methodology. It is driven by a clear vision. So you have to know exactly where it is that you're headed. You have to know exactly where you're headed. And so most of the time, especially from a business perspective, what's going to drive your vision is typically, or move your vision forward, is always going to be your mission. I always like to say that, especially from a personal perspective, we all have a purpose. And our purpose is usually whatever that passion is that kind of fuels our soul. So you identify your purpose and you make sure that your purpose is also driving you forward. And our values is what is how we choose to show up in this world, right? And so your values are also part of that. So we're using these distinct qualities and characteristics to make sure that we strengthen you and to move you forward. So everything that we do, everything that you should be doing should always be results focused. It should be you should always be looking towards the future. I know that we're in this crazy season. So many of us are probably used to planning months or maybe even years out. But since we're in such a crazy season right now, and some of us don't even know how to get to our ideal client or how do we begin to pivot, start in smaller chunks. I was on a webinar a couple of days ago and they said, don't try not to look any more than 3 months out right now because things are changing so rapidly. And so you want to make sure that you can if you set it up in smaller chunks, so if you plan for 3 months at a time, then you're able to look and see what's working, what isn't working, and then begin to adjust. And then when you run into those barriers, you always want to identify what lessons did you learn over this season, and then how can you apply those lessons forward. I am huge about organizations making sure that they create a learning environment. And when I say a learning environment, I'm talking about the perspective of when something happens, we note what has happened. I always suggest to do a plus and delta, what went well, what went wrong, and then how can we bridge the gaps between those two areas. So if you have a team, make sure that you're working with your team to remain innovative and open to growth. Because what happens over this time is that people sometimes get kind of stuck in what isn't going well. And so that will minimize the ability to be innovative and creative. So you always want to find ways to create engagement within your team, create a learning environment, and being flexible to adjust. Okay, so align with purpose. I am an archery person. I love archery. Anytime I can go out to shoot, I will always go take the opportunity to go out and shoot. So when I think about our goals, when I think about the direction that you're headed in from a business perspective, it always starts out with a vision. And so whenever I am sitting there behind the line, ready to, or setting up my bow and arrow, I typically will close my eyes first to envision that target. And I envision my arrow going right down to that center bullseye. And so when you think about aligning with purpose, that's truly what you're doing. You are, again, looking at your vision, your purpose, your mission. And you are always making sure that that is at the top of your mind. And so let me go back a little bit. So when you're looking at the actual illustration for align, redefine, and grow. So align with purpose is always at the top because it should stay, your purpose, your mission, your vision should stay at the top of your mind. Because during seasons of change, we tend to get off track. And I know one of you said that, not quite sure where to go from here. So during seasons of change, you always want to refocus, and you want to make sure that that purpose is what's driving you to stay on track. So what tends to happen during change is we begin to feel unsteady. We feel like we might be spiraling, we might be a little bit off track, right? And so you want to begin to shift that perspective. So a couple years ago, I had started working with a client, It was a small business. She had about 5 employees. The company revenues had continued to see a net loss, and the business itself was relatively stagnant. The business owner was kind of grappling with, do I stay open or do I close? What do I need to do? She knew that she needed to increase her revenues she needed to increase her revenues, but she also needed to increase her profit margins. She needed to grow her team for the vision that she had. And so, like I said, they had recorded net losses for the last couple of years. She was extremely frustrated. When we first started working together, she did not have a mission or a vision statement outlined. She had been in business for close to a decade, but she had never really identified what was the mission of her organization. So she was so busy growing her business that she hadn't established that framework that she needed to operate. So during seasons of growth or of non-growth, where things might be uncertain, probably like now, right? Where we thought we had this strong foundation, but we realize that there's now gaps in our operation, or we're not able to meet our ideal clients. It's important for you to begin to, again, going back to that align with purpose. So really getting you and your team back on track to how can we be intentional about our alignment? Where do we lack clarity and direction? And then how can you be intentional about how you can engage? So every day when you start out, I want you to feel strong and empowered and focused. And so, what I want you to do on a daily basis is about 15 to 30 minutes before you start your day, just gain clarity on what your day looks like. I typically will have my clients write out their mission statement on at the very top of their. If you have a notebook that you work with, if you have a checklist that you use, make sure that that's at the top of line, but at the top of at the top of your workbook. But I want you to think about, and if you have a team, make sure you pull them in as well. But be intentional about your day. Make sure that you stay on task. So whether that is making lists, whether that is following up with your team to make sure that there's a level of accountability. If you don't have a team, then make sure that someone is holding you accountable. So get an accountability partner so that you can definitely stay on track. So your goal is to just make sure that you have a clear direction that you're headed in. If you don't have a financial goal, then please make sure that you put one together. I always say that your financial goal is your roadmap to where you're headed. You're able to really break it down into smaller chunks. So if you're looking at a 3-month period of time and you're saying over the next 3 months, I want to make 9 grand. Well, that's about 3 grand every single month. So you can do a pulse check every single month and make sure you're checking your milestones. So here are some ways that you can make sure that you stay aligned with purpose. You can ask yourself questions like, why is this goal important to me? How will they move me closer to actualizing my vision? And how will they cultivate the results that I want for my clients or for me? So if at any point you determine that you're working on something that perhaps isn't lining up with your mission or with your purpose, then you probably want to ask yourself, what is the point of me even tackling these goals? Because what tends to happen is that people get busy but not productive. And so you kind of find yourself on that hamster wheel. And so I want you to get off that hamster wheel. Remember, align with purpose is really about you taking your goals, you're gaining clarity, and you're moving yourself in a direction so that you can break through the chaos and the uncertainty that you might be experiencing. So as you head down the left side of the triangle, redefine the barriers is next. And so with redefine the barriers, what you're doing is you are learning to embrace and understand the season that you're in. Angela, I don't want to embrace COVID. I don't want to embrace this virtual world. That's typically what happened. People will resist it at every turn, right? We will identify all of those negative aspects of what is going on in our environment. And remember what I said earlier, the longer you resist it, the longer you're going to stay stuck. So when you're heading down that left side of the triangle, you want to remember that you have the ability to redefine the barriers that you're experiencing. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, I found myself stuck in this space where I didn't know what to do, and so I found myself googling like crazy. I found myself listening to what other people were saying about cancer and my possible diagnosis and how sick that I was going to be. And about a weekend, I was like, look, Angela, you have the ability to define your situation instead of your situation defining me, right? And so that's what I want you to think about it. COVID is it's an experience right now that everybody is going through, but you have the ability to define the situation that you're currently in. You can embrace this season. And by embracing the season, I'm not saying, yay, go COVID, right? What I'm saying to you is, how can I maximize this season that I'm in? Because once you start looking at it from a perspective of growth instead of a perspective of lack, then then you'll be able to move yourself forward. You'll be able to move your team forward. So when I was sharing with you about my client that I work with. So she didn't embrace or understand the season that her business was in. She knew that her team that the financials was showing a net loss. One thing that we have to remember to do over this season is not be driven by our feelings, right? So some, especially from a feminine perspective, for a lot of women, we lead with our hearts, we lead with our emotions. And sometimes that can show up in our financial performance as well. I don't feel like I'm performing well. I don't think that I'm making enough revenue. Get those hard concrete numbers and set those goals for yourself. Set those milestones for you, set those milestones for your team so that you can begin to move forward. So what I had did, I started my business in 2016. And so I had went back to school to complete my master's degree. And so when I was doing my SWOT analysis, I knew I had already identified like a slow revenue growth for myself. So I had already planned for that. I knew that I was only going to pick up a certain amount of clientele. I knew that that revenue growth might not be as fluid as I would like for it to be. And so I had begun to put measures into place to make sure that I would overcome that slower season. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer, it wasn't startling to me when I thought that, oh, when I was told, Angela, you might have to scale back, or you might have to think about the way you go at business. So I had already had some measures in place. No, again, not embracing the cancer because I declared that I'm going to give it back. But what I did do is say, I'm going to get through this season the best way that I knew how. And so, or the best way that I could. So, redefining your barriers is about looking at this opportunity as an opportunity of growth. And figuring out ways that you can identify the potential roadblocks, remove the blinders, and then adapt a growth mindset. Because once you're able to shift your mindset, you are more than likely you'll be able to overcome so much of what you're currently going through, because now you're looking at the future and not necessarily this current situation. So with my client, we had to shift her mindset first. She and her team began to put goals together that were driven by her budgets and her financial. So she began to shift the way that she looked at her business as a whole. And she and her team were able to make informed decisions. So, what I want to do is, and you don't have to answer the chat, this is just a rhetorical question. But what I want you to think about is, what is one change that you can make right now to redefine your world? And just, think about that for a second. Let that sink in. Because when I asked earlier about some of the barriers of impact, that some of the barriers that are currently impacting you from achieving your goals, that some of you were probably able to rattle some of those barriers off pretty quickly. And so for many of us, we can see those barriers, but we don't think about how we're able to shift it. And so I had shared with you that, again, your mindset is one thing, but looking to see what's within your control is another. So redefining those barriers is taking a look at your operation and how you can begin to redefine some of those barriers or those obstacles so that you can be in a place to make a positive impact on your business. So your goal is to provide the service or products that you have with excellence, okay? So status quo is not an option. So if you are just waiting for this opportunity to pass you by, or for this opportunity to pass, I want you to remember that status quo is not an option, because the longer that you maintain status quo, the chances are you're going to stay behind your competition. So it is up to you to begin to remove those roadblocks and those binders for you and your team. Also, I want you to think about, what is this season telling you about your industry or your operation? Because there is something that you're learning about this season that you're in. And so you want to begin to look at industry reports, talk to colleagues or clients, and then look at what's spilling over into other industries. I also teach as a professor at GCU. And so I teach in the hospitality. I teach some of the courses in hospitality. And one of the cool things that the hotel industry did in other areas, other countries, is that they took their hotels and they actually transformed them into hospitals. And so, we sometimes we have to do this out of the box thinking, especially over seasons like this. We have to begin to think about, if you're not able to do what you currently can do, or what your business model states, then how can we shift and meet our clientele's need, or different demographics needs over this time? So ask questions to yourself, ask questions to your team. How can you capitalize or pivot during this time? Because there is always some direction that you can take. I just don't want you to get stagnant. I don't want you to accept status quo. So the redefine phase is really looking to take action and looking to shift your current situation. So with redefine barriers, be prepared, um, establish that growth mindset, and plan to overcome. So choose to define your situation. Don't allow your situation to define you. All right. So as we move into grow your influence isn't about just you per se. It is about the impact and the influence that you are making on the people that are around you. Because we are not in this world alone. I can guarantee you that someone is watching you, someone is in your corner rooting for you, whether it's your family, whether it's colleagues, friends. There is someone on your side that's watching you. And so it is about, grow your influence is about impact and influence just as much as it is about making sure that you achieve your goals. So I love this quote by Wilma Rudolph. Never underestimate the power of dreams and the influence of the human spirit. We are all the same in this notion. The potential for greatness lives within each of us. And when you think about your dream or the vision that you have for your business, this is the opportunity for you to really seize it, to really make sure that you're moving your vision forward. This is your opportunity to make an impact on your lives and your community lives. We all went into business for a reason. And all of us, we knew the risk going into business, and we also know the rewards. So think about the impact that you will make with your team, with those around you. And I love the quote that says, when you empower yourself, others are empowered. So think about who's around you, who's in your circle. How can they begin to help you, especially if you're shifting your model or if you're doing things a little bit differently. Make sure that you're leveraging your network to get the word out. So again, we haven't touch on SMART goals. Does everyone know what SMART goals are? I'm hoping that you do. I won't dive in too deep, but I'll give you a bit of, we'll touch a little bit on what SMART goals are. Looking in the chat, awesome. Everybody is saying yes, that's pretty cool. And make sure that you track your progress. That is important. So influence, I want to give a quick definition of influence, because when you think about influence, influence is the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something else. And so if you are leading a team, if you're leading your business, you're having an impact on your business, whether you realize it or not, especially when you're coming at it from a growth mindset or if you're coming at it from a fixed mindset. Either one of those are going to have an impact on the direction that you're headed in. And so again, that growth mindset, we want to make sure that we're headed, we want to make sure that internally we're showing up the way that we want it to actualize externally. And so SMART goals, everybody on the call had said that, yes, they know what SMART goals are. So I just want to go over it for those of you who have not, or who did not have the opportunity to throw in chat. But SMART goals are specific, measurable, actual, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And so on this chart, it shows some questions that you can begin to ask yourself as you are developing your goals or as you're outlining a plan for your business. So make sure that you have clear goals. So be as specific as possible. Who is doing what? When are you going to do it by? Where and why? So, and then measurable. So again, I kind of gave you a measurable stat earlier. My goal is to get 9 grand over the next 3 months. Okay, so that's every month, that's about $3,000. Break it down into different product or service segments, and that way you know that you're tracking and moving in the right direction. Is it achievable? So what resources do you need to achieve that goal? Do you need to assign that to someone else? So again, reaching back out to your network if you're alone, maybe reaching out, setting up an advisory team, but just having someone in your corner to make sure that you're moving things forward. Is it relevant? So this goes back to the align with purpose. So does it play a role with my overall mission and vision? Why is it important? And then finally, that time bound. When am I going to have this complete? When am I going to follow up? So you just want to make sure that you are outlining your goals. You're making them as specific as possible. The goal isn't to do busy work, but it's just to get very clear with the direction that you're headed in. And SMART goals will help you gain clarity. So just a quick recap. So, as you align with purpose, so be intentional about the direction that you're headed in. As you redefine the barriers, remember to embrace the season that you're in. By embracing the season that you're in, you'll be able to conquer change and cultivate results. So remember to adopt a growth mindset. If you find yourself, and we all do it, I do it from time to time. I get focused and get stuck on some of those uncontrollables. But if you find yourself stuck, then, I gave you those probing questions earlier. Just ask, how are you being intentional about your day? What can I do differently to redefine the world that I'm in? And then grow your influence. So growing your influence is making sure that you leave an impact and a legacy. And most importantly as well, making sure that you have those measurable goals in place so that you're able to grow your business to that next level. So what questions do you have for me? You can either drop them in chat if you're not comfortable with talking, or you can take yourself off of mute, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any real questions. I just wanted to say that your presentation's awesome, and I really love all the quotes that you've been putting at the bottom of your presentation. Like, that's really cool. They're just all very inspiring. So I just wanted to say thank you to that. And it's, I think this is a super helpful webinar and podcast. And even like as a podcast, it would be awesome. This is like so relevant right now and so needed. And I just think your presentation just was spot on. So thank you.
My pleasure, Heidi. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, hey, if you have questions and you're not comfortable with sharing them out loud, I understand that as well. Please connect with me. You can follow me on social media. The platforms that I'm probably most prevalent on is LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do a bi-weekly communication from a newsletter perspective where I share different tips and tools. And in the midst of COVID, I quickly pivoted my business. I had identified that I had gaps in my business model. I didn't have a way to connect with my clients or prospects. And so I created Cultivators Corner. And Cultivators Corner is a place where education and transformation collides. And so it gives you the opportunity to connect with like-minded leaders. I started the Cultivator Circle, which is an opportunity to meet monthly with innovative thought leaders across the nation. And so I would love to share more with you about, or to stay connected with you, but I would also love to share more with you about Cultivators Corner or the Circle if you're interested. Feel free to drop me an email. Hey, I look forward to connecting with each of you. I'll turn it back over to you, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Angela. Again, we really appreciate your time. And just as a reminder to everyone that we do record these and they do get posted on our YouTube channel and then shared on our website. So if you want to share this with colleagues and friends, we highly recommend you do so. And if you would like to even just go back and listen to it at a later time, sometimes you can get extra little golden nuggets later on when you can listen to it in your own time. So yeah, if you also want to check out, we do have other webinars coming up, and those are again listed on our website. So make sure to take a look at those. So again, thank you so much, Angela, and we look forward to seeing everybody at the next webinar.
Nice meeting you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.